So welcome everyone to our webinar, Empowering Family Teacher Connections. We want to thank you for the privilege of your time. We're excited to be with you here today to share just a few insights and perspectives, some actionable next steps to empower family teacher connections that we think that would serve you really well to support student success. And thank you for everyone for joining us today. And so who am I? And so my name is Dr. Marion Smith Jr. I'm the Chief Learning Officer here at Thrively. I'm a career educator and a racial equity scholar practitioner. This is year 24 for me in this space. And so I come to all of you as a former secondary English teacher. I'm gonna have to give a shout out because I saw someone from my hometown in Las Vegas. So former secondary English teacher in the fifth largest school district in the country, Clark County School District, former school principal, former school district chief academic officer, former superintendent of schools, and most recently, before joining Thrively, served as an assistant state superintendent. I know you look at me and say, wow, he's done all of that and he still looks so youthful. Thank you. And so, exactly, I'm joined today by my colleague, Jamie.
Hello, I'm Jamie Jo Morgan, and I've been in education 16 years, and we both look so young. For 8 of those years, I was a gifted and talented instructional specialist. Thrively is so important to me because I used it in my classroom. 250 students a week came through there, and I saw the difference, the impact that it made. So when I had the chance to join Thrively, I absolutely did. I live in North Texas with a very patient husband and 2 incredible daughters. And so I am here. I'm excited. I cannot wait to get started today. Just so blessed and grateful to have all of you joining us today. So speaking of today, during our time together, we're going to spotlight research findings about the significance of building strong relationships between families and teachers. We will explore how Thrively's resources like our strengths profile, well-being check-ins, and our Hope Index can be used to facilitate and deepen those connections that you make with your students and with your parents. And by the end of this webinar, you will walk away with practical strategies that you can implement right away, like today, tomorrow, next week, right away.
No, thank you for that, Jamie. And so before we start talking about the research that really underscores the positive impact of parent-family teacher connections, if you wouldn't mind using the chat to just jot down words, phrases, or ideas that come to your mind when you think about the phrase authentic parent-teacher connections. So like, what does that mean to you? What comes to your mind? I want to be able to hear just some of your ideas. And so we see communication, mutual care, so receptive communication. And so we see empathy and kindness, common goals and respect. And so please continue to fill the chat there. So keeping the student at the center, that speaks to our heart here at Thrively, where it is about being learner-centered, learner-focused. And so when you hear that phrase, authentic parent family connections, what really comes to mind? And so continue to jot down your ideas there. One thing that I wanted to share is here at Thrively, we approach authentic family teacher connections in 3 ways. And we're going to walk through that and provide some targeted resources to support that. So the first way is that educators meeting families where they are with accessible technology and learning focused activities. So that's our first way that we approach this work around authentic family teacher connections. The second approach is teachers share those learner centered resources and strategies that are aligned with those high quality standards based curricular resources. And then lastly, it's all about families knowing what their children are learning and that they're empowered to support their children at home. And so that serves as our container around how we focus on this work here at Thrively as we focus on unlocking those positive learning identities through strengths. You'll hear a little bit more about that, about really focusing on supporting well-being, and then lastly, instilling hope. But as you see on this slide here, the research is loud and clear, and the evidence is apparent. I won't read all of this, but I just wanted to spotlight a few of the bodies of work that really underscore why this is so important. And so a study published by the Southwest Educational Development Laboratory found that the family participation in education is twice as predictive of students' academic success as family socioeconomic status. I'll read that again, that the family participation in education is twice as predictive of students' academic success as family socioeconomic status. We have research from the Harvard Family Research Project that indicates that strong parent teacher relationships contribute to better social skills and behavior in students, right? So children demonstrate higher emotional resilience and adaptability when their parents, their families, and teachers work collaboratively. We also see research that underscores that from the National Center for Education Statistics that schools see a decrease in absenteeism when there is active parent-teacher collaboration. I could continue to go on and on with what the research says about the power of authentic parent-family-teacher connections. And we want to be able to talk a little bit about now let's explore what are some of those practical Thrively resources and strategies that you can actually begin to implement to leverage and or deepen your connections with families. Jamie.
So at Thrively, we say what's strong with you, not what's wrong with you. You might have seen this poster behind me. Um, we believe that this is anchored in our belief that every child has a genius and every child deserves to thrive. And we do mean every child. We're all born with the same number of brain cells. Einstein, Beethoven, Michelangelo. It's how those cells are stimulated that determines the pathways that are formed. So as you engage with your class, think about the students and those possibilities that exist before them, and think about the opportunities that you have as educators to help unlock that potential in every single one of your students. So we start with the strengths assessment and the strengths profile. And I'll talk about how they can be used to transform our conversations with students and their families during parent-teacher conferences or any regular update or feedback conversation. So the strength assessment is the first thing. It's a 30 to 40-minute assessment that measures 23 strengths areas. And after completing this assessment, students receive a personalized profile that shows them their top 5 strengths and gives them positive and uplifting details about their unique personality, their innate strengths. How can this be used to leverage those family teacher connections? Well, by empowering student-led discussions. So one of the primary goals of using the strengths profile during conferences is to empower students to take the lead in discussions about their own strengths. So you can actually encourage your students to articulate what they excel at. So we can create an atmosphere of positivity and engagement. So this doesn't just boost their confidence, but it allows families to see those children in a new light. So that helps you build stronger connections. So when we frame our conversations around each student's unique strengths, we can establish a strong foundation for communication with our families. And this approach can foster mutual understanding and collaboration as parents gain insight into how their child's strengths can be leveraged for academic growth, yes, but also personal growth. This has practical applications as well. So you can effectively integrate the strengths profile into discussions, specifically at parent-teacher conferences, but additionally, we can use these as goal-setting discussions for parents and educators to align our ideas in supporting student aspirations. So by incorporating the Thrively Strengths profile, this not only enriches that conversation that you have with the parents, but it also emphasizes that importance of recognizing and nurturing each student's potential. So by focusing on strengths, We can create more engaging and supportive environments for every learner, those joyful, hopeful classrooms. And you've heard us say humanizing education. So if you've got your Thrively account and you want to print strength certificates, it is very simple. At the top of your screen, you'll see a My Classes button. When you click that, then you click the three dots. I like to call it the sideways skinny snowman. And once you click that, you're going to see print strength certificates. There's a little pop-up that allows you to select individual students or your whole class, and you can print this in English or in Spanish. And then after they complete the strengths assessment, students receive a personalized certificate. It has positive, uplifting language, highlights their top 5 unique strengths, and it celebrates not only their individual qualities, but it provides them with language to articulate their strengths and gain a deeper understanding of who they are and the value that they bring to their families and their classroom. My students like to call this a letter from someone that knows them deep down in their soul. It is remarkable to watch students get this and see those results, but also printing strength certificates for parent teacher conferences, IEP meetings, and yes, even disciplinary meetings. You can transform those discussions when you give students the opportunity to brag about their achievements and foster that sense of pride and visibility. So from my personal experience, I can tell you that sharing these certificates is incredibly moving for parents. So many of them are so touched to see their child's strengths acknowledged in such a meaningful way. And that small gesture can bring strong connections between families and educators. It makes everyone feel seen and valued. At the bottom of that, one of the fantastic features that we have on the Thrively platform is that you can allow parents to connect directly to the child's account and see the strengths profile, their interests, and their aspirations, along with additional resources tailored to support their child's development. So when you've got parents that are involved and informed, they can better support their children's strengths and areas for growth, and that ultimately enhances that partnership between home and school.
And so, Jamie, if I could just add something there. And so,
Sure.
one of the things that we learned over time, and so I'm speaking now as a former school district chief academic officer and superintendent of schools that utilize Thrively in different capacities, it is about being able to, I like to say that people with good information make good decisions, right? Like people with bad information oftentimes make bad decisions. So, how do we provide information that's going to be timely, that's relevant, that really speaks to knowing every student's strength? And being able to utilize that to create plans, being able to utilize that to proactively discuss lessons, to be able to proactively create learning plans specifically to meet their needs and their ambitions. And so being able to use that as a bridge to engage in conversations with families has been a tried and true experience that I've seen as a systems level leader of having this information and how teachers, school leaders have used this to really create that conversation around we really know who your child is, and we're going to create the conditions for them to be successful to lean into those strengths that have been identified.
Absolutely. And we can actually help support them in their aspirations. So, one of the things that it does is collect their interests and aspirations. We can actually use this to support them. Help us support your child's dreams.
Absolutely. And so, one actionable step, a second actionable next step is utilizing our well being check in. At the onset, I talked about Thrively focusing on what I like to call our key three. One is really around unlocking positive self identities. The second is focusing on well being. And the third is instilling hope. And so, when we think about this second resource, like what exactly is it? And so this was developed, the Wellbeing Index was developed in partnership with Turnaround for Children. And it's a tool to help educators hear directly, quickly, and systemically from all students in the classroom. And so, how often do we step into a classroom space? The bell rings, we have some type of bell ringer, do now, that really activates their learning. And then we go directly into academic content. But we must ask ourselves, are our students feeling and functioning well emotionally to be able to receive the academic instruction, right? The old adage is, I taught it, but the students didn't learn it. Well, we have to create the space and the conditions so that our students can feel ready to receive the instruction. And so it's a 60 to 90-minute self-assessment check-in that provides real-time data on how our students are feeling and functioning. And so it's all about creating a space where students can share how they're processing and navigating what may have entered into the classroom with them, what happened at home, what may be happening after they get out of the classroom. And so this particular check-in not only provides a structure that validates their experiences, but also begins to foster an environment of trust and openness as they engage with this data with their teacher, teacher engages with family. And so research shows that well-being leads to emotional security, it leads to higher executive functioning skills, which then impacts achievement. And so how can we actually use this in developing or deepening our family teacher connections? And so a practical way that we've seen in some of our schools across the country has been when educators, or it's when and how educators choose to share the well the well-being index data with families. And so it's all about sharing a regular updates from the well-being check-in with families, right? Like identifying those trends, those areas of concern, those areas of strength, and then providing and then being able to talk about those additional supports. An example of this is it could be a part of your weekly calls or communications that you have to families. Some of our schools implement the weekly well-being check-ins every day. And so they create a regular cadence at the beginning of every class period or at the very end of every class period, and they use that. And at the end of the week, they're making calls out to certain family members or sending information home to families. We know that may not be conducive to those of us that were in the secondary space whose class loads are 150, 160, 170 students. But what we've also found beneficial is being able to share this real-time data around students' functioning and well-being during progress reports. And so the 9-week reporting period, that halfway marker, sending home this actual data that highlights here is what's going on psychologically and mentally with our students. And then at the very end of that 9-week evaluation cycle as well. And so just being able to send this information home on a regular cadence really has encouraged our families to discuss what they're seeing, being able to reinforce some of those positive, supportive conversations that they're having about around well-being, and then being able to create a plan. Like what needs to happen as I'm talking with the teachers, I'm talking with the counselor that needs to be put in place for my child to be successful to receive the academic instruction. So this has allowed for families to stay informed about their child's emotional health. It's we've seen data that it allows for fostering more open communication, being able to talk about, well, here's what's happening in the home environment, or here's what is needed to ensure that my son or daughter is able to be fully engaged in the learning. Jamie, do you want to add anything to that
Absolutely.
specifically?
I used to make it part of my, you come in, you unpack, you get your Chromebook, you do your well-being check-in. And then I made it part of my routine as I was submitting my attendance to look and see if I had any kids that needed my attention. And it might have been a simple conversation, all that they needed. It might have been, I need a referral to a counselor. Several times there were, I need to make a phone call home right now today. And there were actionable steps that I could take as an educator to help change the outcome for some of these students that were in a really negative space.
No, absolutely. And it allows for you to like track the data over time if you're using it consistently, and then being able to just monitor and have those conversations not only with the student, but then being able to share that with family members. Like you're noticing some of the positives as well. Let's amplify that. What can we do to continue that joy for learning in the classroom? But here are some areas of concern that I'm noticing about what they're sharing about how they're experiencing or feeling in this space. So what can we do to partner together to be able to do that? So it's not just a hunch that you have. It's not just a gut feeling that you have. It's actually anchored in real time data that students are presenting to us based on those prompts and those questions that they're answering around are they ready for learning today?
Absolutely. The Third step is exploring Thrively's Hope Index, which is a crucial resource for instilling hope, not just within our students, but in our family teacher connections. We thrive when we are hopeful. So at Thrively, when we talk about hope, it's not an abstract emotion, but it's a cognitive trait. Thrively helps measure and nurture hope in every child. So, since the year 2000, research across various sectors like the military and education has highlighted the role of hope, the role hope plays in achievement. So, studies focus on the frontal cerebral cortex of the brain. That's where hope resides. And it shows that hope can be nurtured and developed over time. So, one of the things we've learned about hope is malleable. Hope mediates anxiety and it enhances cognitive functions. And so importantly, when students develop hope, they build resilience, and that allows them to navigate challenges effectively. And we know how many challenges our students face every day. So, what is the Hope Index? It's a 2-minute assessment. It's a survey administered at least 2 times a year. It can be quarterly, it can be the beginning of the year, the end of the year, but it measures agency and pathways. And when we talk about agency and pathways, we like to call this the willpower and the way power. So they know what they want or they know how to reach those goals. So how can this be used to leverage those family teacher connections? Well, we developed this in partnership with Kathleen Beachboard, who is the author of The School of Hope. And this index is just an additional core resource. We can leverage Hope Index in several ways to strengthen our connections with families. So by using the Hope Index results to initiate discussions with families about their child's strengths and aspirations during meetings, we can then discuss hope and help parents understand their child's perspective and foster a more collaborative environment. We can use this for collaborative goal setting. So we involve families in setting hope-driven goals for their children. So this is personal goals or aspirations or academic goals. I remember my daughter in 8th grade talking about how she wanted to be valedictorian and go to Harvard. Those kinds of goals, or very simple, small goals. And you can help with that goal setting. Personal goals, and aspirations, academic goals, aspirations, and building support networks for your students. So by fostering a supportive community where hope is shared among students, families and educators create an environment that empowers students to thrive, we can create these ongoing targeted conversations about life goals. So incorporating hope into our family teacher discussions not only enhances our relationships, but creates a strong foundation for student success. I know that measuring hope in my classroom did so much. One of my favorite things about hope is that it's contagious. So I would take a student with a low hope score and sit them at a table with students with a high hope score. And naturally, guess what happens? Their hope rises. And that's one of my favorite facts about hope. And so I think it's so important that we share this with our families and bring them into that conversation.
No, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that, Jamie. And so, one of the things that we mentioned, or that I did mention at the onset, is, or if I didn't, this is going to be a quick and perky 30 minutes. And if we look at our time, we're almost at the end of our time together. Why do we focus on short chunks? Because we want to be able to provide just digestible information, takeaway resources that you can actually say, let me rewatch this and I can implement this tomorrow in my learning space. And so as we come to the end of our short time together, let's recap a few of those actionable next steps that we shared. So first, we discussed how to use Thrively Strengths Profile. So remember, that's our students' unique personalized top 5 strengths. And we're using that to encourage common language when we start talking about student assets, right? So we have to calibrate, what do we mean in this space as we're working with our families? We talked about using that student strengths profile as the foundation for those student-led parent-teacher conferences. But beyond the parent-teacher conference, anytime that you're engaging in progress monitoring conversations, how do you pull back How do you pull out that student's profile? How do you focus on like where are some areas where you're leaning really strong into this? Where's evidence of how you may be challenged by doing this in this particular lesson or activity? It's a great opportunity to share that with the student, have them reflect on that and have conversations with their family members as well. We also talked about being able to print out the strength certificate and provide login access to families so they can connect directly to their students' Thrively account. Second, we talked about how do we leverage our well-being educators, share that real-time information that focuses on the emotional health of the student so that they are ready for academic content. So whether that is on your Marvelous Mondays, your Wellness Wednesdays, your Touch Base Thursdays, or if it's once a month, um, how are you utilizing that information and sharing it with families so that they have an understanding of how does their child come ready to learn and how can you work together to ensure that what's happening at home and what's happening at school supports them from that functioning and feeling perspective. And lastly, we talked about, or you just heard Jamie talk about utilizing the Hope Index. And so that provides insights into the student's agency and pathways. We know that this is we work, meaning we cannot do this alone. And so students have an opportunity to sit with this information, teachers partnering or educators partnering with family members to create an action plan. And so using this data to talk about the agency, meaning the will to get this accomplished, and then also the pathways, my ability to be able to do that. And so sitting with this information, and as Jamie pointed out, creating those collaborative goals, those personal goals and aspirations, and also developing those academic goals and aspirations based on real-time data, right? Oftentimes we create information based on singular data points. And so we've had an opportunity to talk about strengths, well-being, and hope, multiple data points that allow for you to deepen those particular practices and connections with our family members. All right. And so we want to thank you all for joining us today for Empowering Family Teacher Connections. And we hope that just this little small introduction to a few of the resources in Thrively piques your interest to want to learn more, that it may have challenged your thinking. It may have pushed you to think differently about how you're utilizing some of these resources or wanting to know more. So if you are interested in learning more specifically about asset-based learning, strengths-based education, and what we call humanizing learning, we encourage you to visit us at thrively.com for more resources. And you can follow us on social media at Thrively on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter. And again, thank you for your time today. And until next time, let's continue to humanize learning together. We appreciate you all. Thank you.